It was a Monday like so many others in Jack Marinotte's small body shop, tucked away in a sleepy Montana town. The persistent smell of oil hung in the air, while the steady hum of the compressor formed a kind of hypnotic rhythm. Behind the large gate stood Megan Walsh. A slender figure, her hair tucked under a worn cap, her hands blackened with grease. For nearly 20 years, she had repaired tired pickups, family vans, and rusty sedans here, discreet, reliable, unnoticed. But that morning, everything changed. Before diving into this incredible story, tell us in the comments where you're from, leave a like, and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. A low, deep rumble shattered the routine. It was neither an ordinary truck nor a biker gang. This roar vibrated through the ground itself. Megan looked up, brow furrowed. A sand-colored behemoth rolled into the yard, armored, perched high on massive wheels. A wild beast unleashed in the calm of a small town. On its door gleamed an insignia she had tried for too long to forget, the emblem of a special U.S. Navy unit. The door opened. 3 men climbed down. Their steps were measured, their eyes sharp, their postures tense like soldiers under inspection. The first, tall with a piercing gaze, walked toward the workshop. "I want to see your best diesel specialist," he said in a cold, firm voice. Before Megan could react, Jack Marinotte, the boss, came out of his office. "Of course, Commander, I'll send Tom." "Don't bother," the officer cut in sharply, his gaze locking onto Megan. "I want someone capable of more than just routine garage repairs." Silence fell over the shop. Megan's coworkers suddenly became intensely focused on their workbenches. She felt her fingers tighten around the chassis she was working on. She knew that tone. That kind of look. All too well. The commander studied her, then glanced at the vehicle she was repairing. "We've got a complete breakdown, sensitive equipment, no room for improvisation." Megan instinctively wanted to shrink back, lower her eyes, 20 years spent keeping to herself, revealing nothing of her past. But outside, the armored vehicle's engine sent out an irregular rhythm, imperceptible to others. Her trained ears recognized the signature instantly. She could have looked away, let a coworker take over as always, but not this time. "The differential is cracked," she murmured without looking up. "Keep driving it, and in a few hours or during your next mission, it'll snap." The commander stepped forward, frowning. "You're certain?" Megan finally met his eyes. "As certain as anyone can be." Jack Marinotte cleared his throat nervously. "Megan, maybe I should." "Let me handle it," she interrupted calmly. A moment of silence. Then the commander nodded briefly. "Show me." At that precise moment, Megan knew the wall of silence she had built over 20 years had begun to crack. The sand-colored giant now stood in the center of the workshop. Under the harsh neon light, its dusty armor gleamed like a war suit. The noises of the street, voices, car horns, faded into the metallic echo of the hall. Megan approached slowly, as if taming a beast. Her palm slid across the cold steel. She closed her eyes and listened. An engine is never just noise. It's a music made of vibration, frequency, the faintest dissonance. To those who know how to listen, it tells a story. "You don't hear it, do you?" she asked almost absently. The commander frowned. "Hear what?" "That faint whistle between 2 revolutions, that's not normal wear. That's metal giving under stress." The 2 other soldiers exchanged a skeptical glance. "Maybe she found that on Google," one muttered. Megan didn't flinch. "Google won't get you out of the desert alive if your vehicle gives out there. Good luck with that." She slid under the chassis in one smooth, confident motion. The entire workshop held its breath. No one had ever seen Megan work like this, without hesitation, every movement precise, almost military. "Crack in the differential housing," she announced as if giving a routine diagnosis. "Keep driving and the whole thing will blow. Wherever you are, you'll be stuck there." The commander crouched beside her. "Can you fix it?" Megan wiped the sweat and grease from her forehead with the back of her hand. "Can I?" The real question, she said, is whether you'll trust a woman who, to you, only does oil changes. A brief, sharp silence hung over the workshop. Then the commander lifted his head as if he had just made a firm decision. Do it. Megan stood up and walked to her locker. When she opened it, a metallic clink echoed through the room, stopping all conversation. What lay inside was not ordinary workshop tools, but precision instruments calibrated to military standards, along with electronic devices no one there had ever seen before. Tom Carter, her coworker of 15 years, was speechless. "Good Lord, where did you get all that?" he whispered. "It's a long story," Megan replied without looking up. The commander watched her every move. It wasn't just the equipment, but the way she handled it, like a technician who had spent thousands of hours repairing machines in conditions where the slightest mistake didn't just cost money, but lives. The diagnostic screen lit up, displaying columns of numbers, temperatures, vibration charts, incomprehensible code to most. To Megan, a clear language. "Wrong lubricant," she explained. "Civilian grade instead of military spec. It destroys your synchros and spreads metal particles throughout the system." One of the soldiers crossed his arms. "And how do you know we came from the desert?" Megan gave a faint smile. "Dust embedded in the brakes, corrosion in the cooling system, heat marks on the axles. I'd say the Nevada test range. You were driving in convoy." Silence fell again. Even the commander didn't reply, but now something else shone in his eyes: respect. Megan realized she had crossed a line. 20 years burying her past, and now, with every gesture, every word, she was unearthing it piece by piece, and she knew it would come at a cost. The repair began. She worked with icy focus, every movement precise as clockwork. Under her hands, the differential casing opened, revealing exactly what she had predicted: fine cracks, gleaming metal shards in the oil, the slow agony of a system whose reliability could mean life or death. The commander watched in silence. His two men exchanged glances, somewhere between respect and unease. "How long have you been doing this?" he finally asked. "Long enough," Megan replied without looking up. Not far away, Jack Marinot stood with his hands on his hips, watching the scene. He didn't understand everything, but he sensed this moment was far more than a simple repair. The air vibrated with palpable tension. 2 hours later, the sand-colored giant found its voice again. The engine purred, the gearbox sang in tune. Megan wiped her hands and nodded. "The vehicle's ready. But drive carefully. I fixed the problem, not the cause." The commander stared at her. "What do you mean by that?" "This kind of failure doesn't happen out of nowhere, either gross negligence, or someone wanted this vehicle to break down." A heavy silence settled before the officer simply said, "We'll meet again, Ms. Walsh." Then he and his team climbed back into the armored vehicle and drove off. The next morning, the atmosphere in the workshop had changed. Conversations stopped whenever Megan walked in. Tom Carter and Emily Vargas cast furtive glances her way. The rumor of the Navy SEAL's visit had spread through Clearbrook like wildfire. Jack Marinot called her into his office. The door closed behind them. "Megan," he said carefully, "I got calls last night, from people I don't know, asking who you really are." "And what did you tell them?" "That you've worked here for 20 years, no trouble, reliable." But he hesitated. "I get the feeling you haven't told me everything." Megan looked away. "Sometimes it's better not to know everything, especially if it could put your shop in danger." At that moment, a heavy, steady engine rumbled outside. Not a customer, not a delivery. Jack paled as he glanced out the window. "It's a government vehicle." A black SUV with tinted windows rolled into the yard. Two figures in suits stepped out, their movements carrying the authority of people no one ever says no to. They flashed badges that silenced Jack instantly. "Naval Criminal Investigative Service," the woman said in an icy tone. "We need to speak with Megan Walsh." "Immediately." Megan stood motionless. She knew this was the moment she had dreaded for 20 years. "This concerns a military vehicle," the investigator began. I haven't done anything illegal, Megan replied calmly. We never said you had, the man answered. But your diagnosis contained details that don't appear in the daily work of an ordinary mechanic. Jack Marino stood awkwardly off to the side in his own workshop. Couldn't we talk somewhere private? He asked. Here will do, the woman cut him off. Unless, Ms. Walsh, you prefer to come with us. Megan crossed her arms. Then tell me clearly what you want to know. The investigator opened a thin file. We found that you appeared in Clearbrook 20 years ago. Before that, almost nothing. No steady employment, very few official documents, almost no digital presence. That's unusual. Megan gave a faint, cold smile. Maybe I just like my peace and quiet. Or maybe I'm running from something. Her words hung in the icy air. Jack shot her a worried look, but she didn't react. What interests us most, the man continued, is how you came to have such precise knowledge of military vehicles still in testing. Your remarks about the differential were accurate, but your analysis of the operating conditions, sand, heat, convoy driving, went far beyond coincidence. It's called experience, Megan said evenly. Experience in what field? Asked the female investigator, tilting her head slightly. Certainly not in a small-town garage. Megan's heart beat faster. She knew that every answer, every deflection would only raise more questions. She had spent 2 decades delaying this moment, and now it was here, in her own workshop. I read a lot. I take courses, she tried. Reading doesn't produce tactical analysis, the investigator cut in sharply. That takes practice. And you clearly have it. Jack Marino cleared his throat nervously. And what does all this mean for my garage? That depends on Ms. Walsh's cooperation, the man replied bluntly. Megan drew a deep breath. Her gaze drifted toward her locker. Beneath the ordinary tools lay a few relics of another life, still waiting. Then she looked up. I need to make a call. The 2 agents exchanged a glance. We're listening. Not here. Someone needs to put all this in context. She stepped out into the yard, phone in hand. The sun was blazing, but all she felt was cold. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dialed a number she hadn't used in 20 years. A ringtone. Office of General Wacker, Sergeant Major Dawson speaking. Megan closed her eyes for a moment, then spoke the words she hadn't said since another life. This is Master Sergeant Megan Walsh. Protocol Vigilant Shield. A long, heavy silence. Then the voice returned, deeper but unmistakable. Megan. It was General Wacker, once her commanding officer, the man who knew her capabilities better than anyone. Yes, sir. 20 years of silence, and now you call on an open line? I've had visitors. NCIS. Questions about a tactical vehicle, Hosh JLTV model. Differential damage. Looked like sabotage. A leaden silence followed, so deep Megan thought she could hear the wind sweeping through the yard. Stay where you are, he said at last. I'm sending someone. Sir, am I in danger? Megan, you still possess knowledge not everyone should have. 20 years haven't changed that. The problem is, others know it now. He hung up. No goodbye, no hesitation, just the icy certainty that something had begun, unstoppable. When she returned, the 2 investigators were still standing with Jack. They looked up as she approached. I contacted my former commanding officer, she said. He'll handle it. His name? Asked the woman. General Wacker. U.S. Air Force. A faint twitch crossed the man's face, but he wrote the name down without a word. Jack folded his arms. And me? Should I be worried they'll shut down my shop? Not if things are as Ms. Walsh says, replied the investigator. But we'll wait. 2 hours later, a heavy rumble echoed in the distance. Not a car. Not a truck. Megan knew instantly what it was, and her stomach tightened. Over the trees, a black helicopter appeared, massive, menacing. It landed behind the workshop, raising a cloud of dust. The blades whipped the air violently. The first to step down wore a uniform, General Wacker. At his side, a woman in a dark suit and a soldier Megan recognized immediately. The last face she ever wanted to see. And his expression said everything. He hadn't come to talk. Who was that soldier, and what did he have on Megan Walsh that could change everything? The roar of the blades slowly subsided as the helicopter settled motionless on the ground. The acrid smell of kerosene mixed with the dusty scent of gravel stirred by the wind. Megan stood in the workshop yard, her hands buried deep in her pockets as if to keep her body from giving in to the instinct to flee. General Wacker stepped forward first. The years had whitened his hair and carved lines into his face, but his bearing was the same, upright, disciplined, every movement deliberate. "Sergeant Walsh," he said. The old rank struck like a blow. It had been years since she'd heard that title. Behind him appeared a tall woman in a dark suit, sharp-featured, with the firm expression of someone accustomed to making decisions others would rather avoid. "Director Morgan, Defense Security Service," Wacker introduced. "She handles cases where secrecy and national security intersect." Megan gave a brief nod, but her eyes were fixed on the third person. The man wore combat fatigues, his cap pulled low. Under the brim-shone eyes she recognized instantly, hard, keen, unyielding. "Sergeant Major Reynolds," said Wacker in a neutral tone, her former team leader. Megan's shoulders stiffened despite herself. Reynolds had been the one she respected most, and feared just as much. "Didn't think I'd see you here, Walsh," he said, extending a hand. "Least of all in a small-town garage." They stepped inside. Jack Marino stayed back, visibly uneasy, while the investigators cleared some space. The workshop suddenly felt like an improvised interrogation room. Director Morgan got straight to the point. "We have reason to believe you still possess classified knowledge. Yesterday, you demonstrated it while repairing a military vehicle." "I repaired a broken differential," Megan replied. Reynolds gave a low, derisive chuckle. "You didn't just repair it, you identified operating conditions you could only know from being in the field." Wacker raised a hand to silence his former subordinate. "Megan, you and I both know your field operations were never in any official records. That's the problem." "My problem," she corrected. "No," Morgan cut in coldly. "A problem for all of us. 3 former members of your unit have recently drawn the attention of foreign intelligence services. 2 have disappeared." A murmur rippled through the workshop. Even the civilian mechanics stopped pretending to work. "You think I'm next?" Megan asked. Morgan's gaze didn't waver. "We don't doubt it." Reynolds took a step forward. "It's no coincidence the SEALs showed up yesterday with that specific vehicle. Someone wanted to see if you were still operational." Megan's heartbeat quickened. The thought that the entire scene the day before might have been a test chilled her more than an open threat ever could. "Megan," said Wacker, his tone firm and unambiguous. "You have to decide now. Either you stay here under protection, or you come with us and help us figure out who's behind all this." Drawn back into the world she had sworn to flee, Megan remained silent for a long time. The smell of oil, the distant thrum of rotor blades, the fixed gazes around her, all faded away. In her mind rose other sounds, the click of tools in the night, the dull thunder of artillery, the crunch of sand beneath combat boots. "I was assigned to a maintenance team," she said at last in a low voice. "Officially. Unofficially, we repaired things that officially didn't exist." Her voice grew steadier as the memories resurfaced. 2008, Afghanistan. Forward Base Falcon. "We just deployed a batch of modified vehicles, the first generation of those JLTVs." Reynolds folded his arms in silence. Wacker gave a slight nod. "Go on." It was the middle of the night. 3 armored trucks arrived. The first was a wreck, the second half destroyed, the third barely moving. The men driving them, she paused. 2 didn't make it. 3 others were badly injured. A heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the buzz of the neon lights. The official report blamed a design flaw, a coding error in the blueprints. Not my fault, officially. Megan clenched her jaw. But I saw the anomaly. I should have asked questions. I signed off without saying a word. Reynolds stepped closer. You still think that was your responsibility? It wasn't. It was, Megan shot back, eyes glinting. Director Morgan's voice sliced through the tension like a blade. A year ago, we discovered that false schematics had been deliberately inserted into the production line by an agent working for a foreign power. Megan blinked. Deliberate sabotage, confirmed General Wacker. And you were the perfect instrument, without ever knowing it. A dull pulse throbbed in her temples. The images of that night in Afghanistan now blurred together with the revelation. 20 years of guilt for a mistake that had never been hers. And now, Morgan continued, some people want to know if you still possess that knowledge. The question is simple, will you hide, or hunt with us? Megan opened her mouth to answer, but Reynolds' radio crackled suddenly. Suspicious movement. Unknown vehicle approaching. No radio contact. The tension froze. All eyes turned toward Reynolds, focused. Position, he ordered. Main road to the west, 200 meters. Closing in. Morgan turned to Wacker. We have no security perimeter, no visual coverage. If someone came specifically for her. I know, Wacker cut in. Everyone inside. Lock the doors. Jack Marino went pale but obeyed. The heavy metal shutters came down in a crash of steel. The air in the workshop thickened instantly, heavy with oil, metal, and contained fear. Megan stayed near her tool cart, her fingers tightening around a wrench as if it were a talisman. What's happening? Whispered Emily Vargas, huddled against Tom Carter. I don't know, he murmured back, but this is way beyond engine trouble. Outside, an engine growled, low, steady, not civilian. The sound stopped dead in front of the closed door. Reynolds signaled. One of his heavily armed men positioned himself against the wall by the entrance. A dull thud echoed, then a second, harder, almost commanding. This wasn't a customer knocking, it was someone demanding entry. Don't open it, Wacker ordered calmly. Morgan folded her arms, eyes fixed on the gate. We need to know who's out there before deciding. Reynolds nodded to another soldier, who leaned toward the viewing slit. His body tensed instantly. Black SUV. No plates. 2 men inside, a third in front of the hood. Sunglasses, earpieces, private security, or worse. A knot tightened in Megan's stomach, that old instinct, the one that had once saved her on patrol before the first shot was fired. They know I'm here, she breathed. Maybe, Wacker replied. But they don't know who else is with you. Reynolds' radio buzzed again. Visual confirmation. The driver's wearing the patch of a private security firm, one that's on our list of enemy covers. Morgan exhaled slowly. Then we've got a problem. Reynolds stepped toward Megan. Here's your ultimatum, Walsh. Either you stand by and hope someone else saves you, or you get back in the game. Megan held his gaze. And if I don't want to play anymore? Too late, Reynolds snapped, nodding toward the door. The game's already caught up to you. A new impact shook the structure, followed by the screech of twisting metal. They're testing the door's strength, Reynolds growled. Wacker grabbed his radio. Alpha, lock positions. No fire until I give the order. Outside, footsteps crunched on the gravel, slow, deliberate. Someone was changing position. Megan Walsh's heart pounded. The old reflex returned, the tunnel of focus, that icy clarity before violence erupted. Sir, came a voice over the radio, 2 figures moving in from the rear. We have visual. Reynolds cursed under his breath. They're trying to flank us. Director Morgan stepped closer to Megan. If they get inside, it's you they're after. The rest of us are just collateral. Then let me go, Megan snapped. And leave the others behind? Reynolds shot back. That's not how it works. A metallic crash cut him off. The lower corner of the door bent inward, letting in a thin ray of light. "Damn it, they've got breaching gear," Reynolds growled. "It won't hold much longer." Wacker spoke in a firm, unyielding tone. "Alpha, prepare yourselves. We'll lock down at the entrance." Megan, frozen by her tool cart, let her eyes fall on a heavy torque wrench. Once, she would have hesitated, not now. She grabbed it, testing its weight in her hand. Reynolds noticed the gesture and gave a slight nod, a silent sign of recognition between people who knew what it meant. The final blow made the door give way. Metal screamed, the lock burst apart. A harsh beam of light cut through the workshop. A figure appeared, massive build, combat helmet, rifle slung across his chest. His movements had nothing of an amateur. This was the precision of a trained professional. Two others followed him, moving in perfect sync like a squad. Reynolds already had his weapon raised. "No fire unless they're hostile," Wacker's voice snapped. "They're already a threat, sir." Reynolds growled, but he obeyed. The first man stepped out of the shadows, black uniform, no visible insignia except for a small, faded dark red patch on his shoulder. Megan saw it, and her heart skipped a beat. She knew that symbol. It didn't belong to any official unit, but to a covert cell, the Shadows, the kind called in for missions no record would ever admit existed. "Well, look at that," the man said, pulling off his black sunglasses. His ice blue eyes locked onto Megan. "Our old mechanic." The air froze. Even Reynolds blinked, surprised. "You know each other?" Wacker asked sharply. "Much better than you can imagine, General," the man replied without looking away from Megan. "We worked very closely once." The old reflexes kicked in, analyze, escape routes, opponents' weaknesses, but Megan knew this man hadn't come to talk. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. A thin smile curved his lips. "Something only you can fix, or refuse to. Depends on your cooperation." Reynolds tensed. "You're on U.S. soil, heavily armed, without a mandate. You have 3 seconds to." "Spare me the countdown, soldier," the intruder cut him off. "You know damn well we don't take your orders." Behind him, the other two shifted slightly, hands near their weapons, aimed at Wacker's team. The air vibrated with tension, one wrong move would spark it all. Megan understood. Mason Kane and his men weren't here by accident. They were the direct link to her past, and he knew exactly where to press to break her. "You have a choice, Megan," Kane said softly, almost intimately. "Come willingly, or we take you." The hangar fell into unbearable silence. The only sound was the faint crackle of hot metal from the broken door. Kane stood barely 3 meters from her, too relaxed for it to be honest. Reynolds stepped forward. "Last warning." "Ah, Reynolds." Kane sneered. "Still the loyal guard dog. But you and I both know she's the only one I'm interested in." He slowly raised a hand, as if to calm things, but at that same instant, one of his men slid sideways while the other stepped forward. "Tactical positioning before a grab," Reynolds barked. "Take cover." Chaos erupted. A dull thud, a smoke grenade rolled across the floor. In a heartbeat, the hall filled with gray haze. Shapes blurred, voices muffled. A metallic click, a weapon being cocked. Then a hand seized Megan's arm. "Time to go," a rough voice hissed in her ear. The grip was strong but not yet brutal. Not yet. Instinct took over. Megan twisted, swung her wrench backward, struck something solid. A curse rang out. The hand loosened. Through the smoke, a weapon flashed. Reynolds reacted instantly, threw himself between Megan and the shooter, dragging her to the floor. Wacker's voice thundered, shouting orders. Morgan called for reinforcements. All around them, the clatter of boots and the crash of falling tools filled the smoke-choked air. Megan felt another hand reaching for her again, this time from the front. She slipped aside, driving her attacker back against the dented fender of a pickup under repair. The metal screeched hideously. The man stumbled, and Reynolds seized the moment to pull him into cover behind his team. "You need to get out of here," he yelled. "And go where?" Megan shouted back. "Anywhere, as long as it's not in their hands." A crash rang out. One of the intruders had overturned a toolbox, scattering its contents in a clattering rain across the floor. Amid the chaos, Wacker's team managed to disarm 2 of the men. The third man, the one with the steel-gray eyes, remained behind. His weapon was lowered, but his gaze stayed fixed on Megan. "This isn't over," he called over the chaos. "We'll meet again, Walsh, next time, without witnesses." Then he withdrew, just as methodically as he had come. In seconds, he and his men slipped through the doorway and vanished. Outside, a black SUV tore away, tires screaming against the asphalt. The workshop was left saturated with smoke, scattered tools, and ragged breathing. Reynolds set a firm hand on Megan's shoulder. "That was your last warning," he said quietly. "You have to choose: keep hiding, and they'll find you eventually, or take the path you fear most, fight back." Megan lifted her eyes toward Wacker, then to Morgan. And for the first time in 20 years, she heard her own voice say, "Maybe it's time." Would she truly accept her old role again? And at what cost? The air reeked of cold metal and smoke. The last curls of gray haze drifted out through the shattered doorway as Wacker's men secured the perimeter. Jack Marino stood frozen at his workbench, staring at the floor, still trying to process that his garage had just turned into a secret battlefield. Morgan stepped toward Megan. Her tone was calm, but razor-sharp. "Mrs. Walsh, we want to bring you back, not in uniform, but to a place where you can help us. Those men will return. The question is, do you prefer to wait for them to decide your fate, or take the initiative?" Megan held her gaze. "What exactly do you want from me?" Wacker took over. "2 options. First, you join our programs as a civilian consultant, full clearance, full authorization, direct work on our new vehicles. Second, you open a training center here in Clearbrook for mechanics who operate under extreme conditions. Your knowledge could mean the difference between a breakdown and a coffin." Reynolds stepped closer. "No matter which you choose, you're back, and we'll protect you. But we need your answer today." Megan looked around the room. Tom Carter, still petrified. Emily Vargas, trying to smile through her fear. Jack Marino, hands trembling on the bench, as if trying to hold on to a truth slipping away. "And if I refuse?" Megan asked. "Then you leave immediately," Morgan said bluntly. "New identity, new location. Today would be your last day here." The words struck harder than she expected. 20 years, this place had been her refuge. And now it was slipping away. She took a deep breath. "I'll accept, but on my terms." "Which are?" Wacker asked. "Here, in this workshop, with these people. And I want this program to teach more than mechanics. It must teach improvisation, how to survive when the manual isn't enough." A faint smile tugged at Reynolds' lips. "That's the Megan I remember." Morgan and Wacker exchanged a look, then Wacker nodded. "Deal." In that instant, Megan knew there would be no return to her quiet, invisible life. She had chosen, and Mason Kane would come back. But this time, she'd be ready. At dawn the next morning, it all began. Trucks arrived, loaded with crates, computers, tools, and machines Megan hadn't seen since her base days. Jack Marino watched in disbelief as soldiers and civilians unloaded the equipment. "This isn't a garage anymore," he murmured. The walls filled with new racks. Workbenches were expanded. In one corner, they set up a sealed area with a coded lock and cameras. "Restricted zone," Wacker explained simply. "Parts stored here don't officially exist." Megan moved among the teams, giving orders, checking every detail. Tom Carter and Emily Vargas were integrated from the start. "You two," she said, "you'll take the first modules, engine, transmission, diagnostics, under pressure." "Under pressure?" Tom repeated, skeptical. Megan gave a thin smile. I mean real pressure, the kind where someone outside is dreaming of blowing you up. The first week, the trainees arrived, young mechanics from various units, 2 directly from Special Forces. Fast, motivated, but startled by the harshness of the exercises. No manuals, Megan said on the 3rd day, setting a stopwatch on the table. You've got 30 minutes to find the fault. After that, the vehicle rolls out, fixed or not. That's what the field is. Reynolds, who remained the first few weeks as liaison officer, watched quietly from a corner of the workshop. She works like she used to, he murmured to Wacker. No, the general replied calmly. She works better than she used to. Despite the progress, a shadow lingered. Reports from the security teams came in at regular intervals, rumors that someone was asking questions nearby about the woman who knew military vehicles better than anyone. Morgan warned her, it's only a matter of time before he comes back. Megan didn't answer. She simply doubled down on the training. The faster my people learn, she said, the less chance they'll have of catching us off guard. By the end of the 2nd week, the workshop ran like a perfectly tuned machine. But Megan knew it was only the calm before the storm. One evening, after the trainees had left, she locked the secure zone, pulled the curtain over the door, and that's when she saw him. Across the street, half hidden under a lamp, stood a massive silhouette, unmoving, the ember of a cigarette glowing in the night. She couldn't make out his face, but she knew. Mason Kane, those ice-colored eyes. Had he come alone, or was this the signal of the next assault? The faint red of his cigarette was a beacon of menace in the dark. Megan froze behind the curtain, every fiber of her body taut. He knew she had seen him, and she knew he never showed himself by accident. She grabbed her radio. Reynolds, he's here. Confirmed, came his terse reply. 2 men are on their way to back you up. No, Megan said softly. This is between him and me. She unlatched the gate just enough to slip through. The night air smelled of metal and oil. I thought you wanted to talk without witnesses, she called as she approached. He smiled, that thin, mocking smile. And here you are. Good. Let's get straight to it. What do you want? You've built something that puts us in danger, he said. I came to make sure it doesn't last. And you think I'll let you through? I think you know I don't negotiate. He stepped forward, hand on his jacket. Megan moved before he could act. The motion came from deep memory, old reflexes, pivot, seize the wrist, elbow, strike. The cigarette fell, his grip loosened. That was your mistake, she said, her voice so cold it startled even herself. He staggered back, tried to draw a weapon, but Reynolds burst from the shadows, 2 agents at his side. Game over. Kane understood immediately, no escape, no chance. He raised his hands slowly. Later, when the black SUV drove off with him and his men, Megan was back inside the workshop. Wacker joined her. You could have taken him down, he said. No, she replied. Sometimes, tightening a single bolt is enough to stop the whole machine. Reynolds gave a faint, crooked smile. Megan looked around the room, the workbenches, the machines, and her young mechanics who would return at dawn. Now, she said, let's get back to work. They'll come again sooner or later, but this time, we'll be ready. The camera would have pulled back slowly, showing the workshop bathed in warm light, while outside the night thickened. But inside, the light didn't come only from the lamps. It burned in those preparing for what was to come.